Testing, testing, testing. Do, 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 do. Testing.
Sigley.
So I don't think I'm being elusive. You're not being elusive. I'm trying to work with you.
Now it's humorous. Now it's beyond amplified. Now it's humorous.
I think she's just like, she doesn't know this. You know, she doesn't know these rules. She doesn't know how this works. She doesn't think she doesn't fall for it. So she's trying to massage it in a way that fit her
Humorous
parameters.
response?
Sure.
Adaptability to the business model, I think, is in key.
No, it's just, it's gotta happen, you know.
Don't worry about it, Kathleen. You're good all the way. Now I know it's humorous.
Okay.
All right?
Steve here?
Yeah, no, he's going to miss today.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yes.
'Cause
So
it's up the
you
county.
briefed me. You've tried your very best.
Oh no, I'm going to be trying more than my best.
Don't hurt her. But
No, I'm not going to hurt her. I told you, I'm going to take I'm going to throw myself on the sword. Haven't been. Clearly,
That's number 3 on our
So
agenda.
let's.
she's an accountant, not a lawyer.
Yeah, I know.
Lawyers understand it.
I think we're there, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Okay, read right over it.
Yeah. Steve's not going to be here today.
I
So.
know.
Kathleen, you're being kind.
Call this meeting to order. Thank you for being here for the January 26th Board of Supervisors meeting. Supervisor Worsley will not be with us today. He's in Sacramento on water issues. So if you'll join me in the flag salute and a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being in attendance at today's meeting. It's an honor to be here once again as the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and there's been many changes since the last time I held this position. And today I would like to share with you not only our triumphs of last year, but also our goals for 2016. Before I continue, I want to thank our past chairman, Steve Worsley, as well as my fellow board members, our CAO, his staff, our elected officials, county and Tulare department heads, employees for their collective efforts and contributions and innovative ideas during 2015. Without the collaboration and dedication of these individuals, we would not be able to keep this county as fiscally sound as it has been, and we will work towards maintaining solvency in the future. 2015 held many challenges for California counties, and we were no exception. As many of you are aware, we have gone through difficult times trying to confront all the issues that have affected our communities as a result of the drought in California, and especially in Tulare County. Some communities were affected more than others, but all our districts and our neighboring counties felt the pain and impacts of the drought. Tulare County has already taken steps to address these impacts of the drought in both short and long terms. The construction of a grant-funded well in Porterville has recently completed in hopes of connecting as many homes as possible in the water to the water in Doyle County area east of Porterville. I want to thank Andrew Lockman and Sabrina Bestamani of the County Office of Emergency Services for working hard to establish the household bottled water program, which was approved to deliver over 1,551 households to date, and the water tank program that provides tanks to help alleviate some of the immediate needs of residents whose wells have gone dry. Thank you to the City of Porterville for helping the county procure the water to fill the tanks, and to organizations such as United Way, CSET, Self-Help Enterprises, that have committed the resources necessary to install the tanks, enabling the county to fully fund the household tank program. Even though the drought was one of the biggest stories in 2015, there were many county accomplishments that need to be recognized. The Tulare County Sheriff's Department added egg production to its beef and pork program to cut the overall costs to feed our prisoners. They also introduced us to mascot Deputy Busby, who will assist the department in strengthening their relations with the youth of Tulare County. The sheriff has also continued funding the community-based officers, which are a big asset to all of our rural communities. Thank you to our retiring Chief Joe Garcia for his hard work over the past 5 years. He added many engines and fire patrol vehicles and continued to improve the outlying fire stations in the unincorporated communities. We welcome our new fire chief, Charlie Norman, and look forward to working with him and seeing our fire department continue to improve. With the help of Major R, state and federal funding, TCAG was able to begin construction on major road projects that include improvements to our major highways such as State Route 99, 190, 198, and Highway 65. They are expected to exceed the $1 billion mark in road projects in Tulare County. Yes, I said $1 billion. Thank you, Major R. With a complete remodel of their facilities and their new debit credit card system at the surplus store, the purchasing department has increased their sales by nearly $20,000 in the last 10 months. New franchise and waste disposal agreements have helped to increase the volume at our landfills and improve our bottom line. Our assessor, public defender, and tax collector all have made significant advances in data conversion projects and went paperless on many of their processes. This frees up a lot of space and time, making information retrieval more efficient. Our UC Cooperative Extension Program and our Ag Commissioner's Office continue to work with our farmers in their efforts to keep Tulare County as the #1 agricultural county in the nation. Roger Dixon came on board to take over our Department of Child Support Services, and with his leadership and direction, we have not only made operations more cost-effective, but have improved the working conditions for our employees. Thank you, Roger. The county established the Parks Advisory Committee in order to receive input from citizens of the county to assist us in the improvement of our parks. The Tulare County Film and Tourism Commission permitted a total of $2.8 million in overall film production projects last fiscal year, and they're on track for another good year. Step Up continues to thrive and respond to the Tulare County communities who are looking to empower their youth. Last year was successful for the program. As the Summer Night Lights program was expanded to include more communities, and the start of the Drugstore Project pilot program in Lindsay. Loop bus ridership continues to grow, and we continue to hold community summits in both the incorporated cities and the unincorporated areas of the county. Now that I've shared with you some of our accomplishments this past year, I would like to draw attention to some of the upcoming goals in various county departments, beginning with Sheriff Mike Boudreau. Public safety truly is our #1 priority. Tulare County Board of Supervisors. The purchase of body cameras for all our patrol officers will continue to take the county to the next level of state-of-the-art law enforcement technology. Adding a second light sports aircraft will help us provide better aerial coverage to support our deputies on the ground. And staff continues to work diligently on the construction of the South County Detention Facility, which will hopefully break ground in February of this year. Once this facility is operational, it will help cut the cost of transporting prisoners from Bob Wiley in the main jail to our new Justice Center in Porterville. Other noteworthy goals include the Tulare County Library will continue to increase access to literacy services, resources, and programs for adults. And the clerk of the board will introduce a new disclosure system that will facilitate the process for filing the Form 700, a requirement for all persons who serve on various boards and commissions, saving the staff a lot of time and money. TCAG will implement a transit discount program for both active and retired military personnel in March of 2016. And they will also begin construction on 3 major projects. State Route 65, 4 lanes from Highway 190 to Teapot Dome, Highway 99 Betty Drive interchange improvements, Avenue 416 widening from Fresno County to Dianuba, and our Resource Management Agency intends to complete $2.5 million in community-based road improvements in addition to the following major projects: Avenue 146 road widening, Avenue 280 road widening, design of a new facility to house the Tulare County Area Transit System bus fleet, the completion of the Road 224 Deer Creek Bridge project in the Terabella area, continue to work on flood control projects throughout the county, and find ways to incorporate groundwater recharge into them. Continue to work with schools in the county to pursue safe routes to school grants. One of our biggest projects for the Film and Tourism Commission this last year has been the virtually reality series, Film for Samsung, to promote their new Android phone and virtual reality gear. The Commission is also getting ready to market Tulare County's filming opportunities at the upcoming Oscars. County Council will continue working with the department heads and employees to continue implementing workplace violence training and in the form of worksite drills in order to provide a safe environment for all county employees. Our Health and Human Services Agency is working to bring a new mental health facility to Porterville with plans to have it operational in 2016. Our County Information and Communications Technology Department will be partnering with the Auditor Tax Collector to plan and implement the Omenum system as a replacement for the existing county tax system, PIMS. This is a 6-year project, with the first year including data mapping and conversion of existing files. The board is working to finalize the purchase of the Tulare Acres Professional Center in hopes of renovating vacant areas of the building, and our goal is to relocate identified county departments to increase organizational efficiencies and service delivery to the public by occupying this and the 2 county-owned buildings recently vacated by the Office of Education. In addition to department goals, there are many other countywide goals and projects I would like to mention. Our Water Resources Program Manager, Denise England, will continue to work with our local water agencies and implement the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act by forming groundwater sustainability agencies and begun formulating groundwater sustainability plans for each of the county's 3 critically overdrafted basins. We have worked diligently with our local water agencies to move the Lake Success Enlargement Project forward, and this is an important project for local water supply reliability, flexibility, and flood protection for our communities. As several years of storage restriction and delays while our federal partners completed studies, we now can use the lake at full capacity once again. In order to increase the pool and local storage potential, our final obstacle is addressing the possible overtapping risk, potentially widening the spillway. The partnering agencies will be working to continue the momentum. I would like to thank the City of Porterville for rejoining our Joint Powers Agreement to continue the fight for the completion of the important regional water project. During my last term as chairman, we established the Speakers Bureau program. Its main focus is to educate the residents of Tulare County on the day-to-day operations of our departments and employees. The Speakers Bureau is a program that improves the county's image and image of all our departments through a diverse group of local government experts who are prepared to speak on a wide range of topics related to government issues. It really does a great job of showcasing our county employees' expertise, and I hope that more of our residents take advantage of this free service, especially our schools and our service clubs throughout the county. Community outreach and communication are a vital part of being a county supervisor, and I encourage all my supervisors to continue to have town hall meetings in their districts whenever possible. This year I will do my best to set up a town hall meeting not only in the Upper Tule and Camp Nelson area, but in the California Hot Springs area as well. The Board of Supervisors will continue to meet with the Tule River Tribal Council on an annual basis, strengthening our communication and collaboration on the needs of both the county and the reservation. In 2006, the Board of Supervisors adopted a strategic business plan to help guide how the county conducts its business proactively. The key goals of this business plan are to promote public safety and security and economic well-being, quality of life, organizational performance. In other words, the plan is intended to help produce real public service results to our residents and businesses. Now that almost 10 years have passed since the adoption of this business plan, it's time to direct our County Administrative Officer to bring forward an update to the Tulare County Strategic Business Plan. Through this update, it's intended that the plan will demonstrate to the public how we are open for business and how our departments will align their goals and budgets to improve public service. With the help of Economic Development Branch, our CAO will continue to administer a strong economic development and target marketing programs for Tulare County. We already have begun 2016 with various projects throughout the county, including the Crystal Golden Ultra High Temperature Milk Export Company in Tipton, McDonald's Restaurant in Early Mart, Foster Farms operation in Traver becoming expanded to include an organic feed mill, Con Edison development of several big, large solar projects in the Ducor area, and Tulare Solar Center. In 2006, I focused my attention on collaborating with the Forest Service and residents in the foothills and mountain areas to encourage wise forest management. That has not changed. Due to the lack of significant progress and pressure from environmental groups, we were unable to complete the tree thinning necessary to reduce the risk of losing trees in our forests, as seen with the Rogue Fire. Having too many trees per acre, combined with a lack of water due to the drought, has severely affected the health of our trees, leaving us with 29 million dead trees statewide. This county was one of the first in California to draw attention to this issue in the state and federal levels. One of our main reasons we are concerned is that over half our county is federal land. The last fire season had significant implications, and future fires due to a large amount of dead trees could easily endanger our giant sequoia groves. In 2015, the legislature passed and the governor signed into law 3 bills: Assembly Bill 243 and 266, and Senate Bill 643, that create a licensing and regulatory framework for medical marijuana. Today, it continues to be a public safety issue throughout Tulare County. In collaboration with our Sheriff, Resource Management Agency, and Code Enforcement Division, we will continue our efforts to control the illegal growth of marijuana in our county and on our federal lands. Our priority is still to promote public safety in all our communities. In closing, there's no doubt we will be challenged in 2016. We will continue to watch for changes from the state and how they handle medical marijuana. We will continue to monitor the drought and work with our communities to help ensure that future water needs of our residents are met. As a board, we will continue to do whatever it takes to keep this county fiscally sound. Again, I would like to thank my fellow board members, our CAO, his staff, our elected officials, County of Tulare department heads and employees, and I look forward to working with everyone as the board, as your chairman in 2016. Thank you all in attendance, and may God bless you all. Okay, let's move forward with Board of Supervisors matters. I'll start with Supervisor Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and nice State of the County presentation. I enjoyed it and look forward to this upcoming year working with you. So whatever we can do to assist, please let us know. Just a couple of things that I wanted to cover today. First of all, just a reminder about tomorrow's Career and Resource Exposition put on by Senator Andy Vidak. I know that we had an announcement a couple weeks ago about this, and again, for anyone looking for a job, the thing that makes this presentation or this exposition unique is that every company or organization that is there has jobs or internships available to the public. So there's real opportunities here. The event will be held from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. At the Tachi Palace in Lemoore. So I encourage everyone to attend that can or is in need of a job. Also, we had a meeting with the Kings Tulare Area Agency on Aging yesterday, and we are losing a very long-time member of the advisory committee, and it's sad to see her go, but she's moving forward in a different stage of her life. So I do wish Sherry Taylor a lot of luck, and seniors in Tulare County will be feeling her absence by her retiring from serving on that committee for, I believe, 12 years or 14 years. So she was an excellent advocate, but we will continue to move forward and advocate for senior citizens in our county. On that note, CSET distributed information yesterday at yesterday's meeting about their income tax program that they offer residents, and you can obtain free income tax preparation done by certified tax preparers if your income is under $54,000 in Tulare County, and they have various locations in Porterville, Cutler, Tulare, and Visalia that will begin operating February 6th through April 9th of this year. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that service because I think it's very valuable for all residents in the county. And that is all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your words this morning. I too look forward to a good year. There is a lot going on, and you just help people realize that was a partial list of things that are going on in the county. So we look forward to your leadership and to many good things happening this year. Last week, I've been working on a interesting project. The LEAD program is a step-up program. We have programs working in Visalia, Tulare, and Porterville this year, and we've focused in on some young people that we really wanted to help teach to be mentors and be leaders in their community. And so we've been working with our Health and Human Service Agency, our Workforce Investment Department, as well as CSET, who is facilitating these training sessions for the young people, and have put out word that come this summer, we have probably about 60 young people who are juniors and seniors in high school right now, so several of them will be graduating this year. And we're going to be looking to place in job-type situations where they'll be able to have, for most of them, their first job. We have several young people that have expressed interest in working in county agencies. We did this last year. There was some trepidation on part of some departments to let young people like this come in, and after they were in there for a while, we got calls saying we need more, we'd like to have more. Well, that really wasn't possible at that point, but a very successful program. We're starting early so that come June we'll have opportunities set up for these people in many departments throughout the county and cities and other nonprofits for these young people to work. Yesterday it was at a meeting with Self-Help and CSET. Supervisor Worthley, myself, and Allison Pierce attended, talking about and looking for an area in the Goshen community for a potential new youth facility. It would be a multi-purpose where there would be aging services, meals for elderly meals, and then youth programs as well for after school. Right now is not an area like that in Goshen where youth can go for after school other than the school. So we're looking really intensely at circulation, the population, where something like this might be. We've not done it yet. We're going to reach out to the sheriff. At one time the sheriff had, they called it a substation. I'll call it a dark room on a dirt lot with poor lighting where they could stop in and the sheriff's deputy could take a break or even talk to some community citizens there. So we've yet to reach out to the sheriff, but are going to. This week I have 2 redevelopment oversight board meetings, one tomorrow evening, and then one for the county will be Friday morning. This Thursday at 11:30, the Tulare County Association of Governments Local Motion Awards are taking place at the Convention Center. You do have to have a ticket for that, so if you don't have your ticket already, you may be just tough out of luck. But TCAG would be the place to contact if you'd like to see what agencies and individuals are going to be recognized for their excellence in transportation issues for this last year. And last but not least, this next Tuesday, February 2nd at 1:30 p.m., there will be a groundbreaking on the corner of Burke and Goshen Avenue in the city of Visalia for their new dispatch center, emergency dispatch center. So I'll be attending there as well. Looking forward to that. That ought to be it will be a great improvement for the city of Visalia, for their administration, and for their dispatchers. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Cheatham.
On January 22nd, we had a meeting in Fresno of the San Joaquin Valley Water Infrastructure Authority, and that is made up of the counties of Merced, Madera, Fresno, Kings, and Tulare. And the purpose of this group is to lobby for and apply for funds from Proposition 1 for the construction of Temperance Flat Dam on the San Joaquin River. In that meeting, Supervisor Worthley was elected the chairman of the group, and we hired an intern executive director, Mario Santoya, And Mario spent 40 years with the Friar Authority and should do a very good job representing us on the lobbying effort. On last Friday, we had a San Joaquin Valley Policy Council meeting, which is made up of the 8 Valley Council of Governments from Stockton to Bakersfield. And we had a special meeting to talk about water. And in this meeting, Mr. Santoyo gave us an overview of where we stand on water this year and what the San Joaquin Valley Water Infrastructure Authority is trying to accomplish. The main purpose of that meeting, the results of that meeting, was that the San Joaquin Valley Policy Council generally advocates only for transportation issues. But after that meeting, the authority is now going to advocate for the construction of Temperance Flat. And the reason is Temperance Flat has the biggest impact upon the San Joaquin Valley versus the other projects that are trying to be built. The problem we have in the San Joaquin Valley is that a lot of our water comes from Northern California. And the linchpin for that water is the Delta. And the Delta has always been a political hotbed for our ability to transfer water through the Delta. And as we found out during the drought years, we received basically no water transferred through the Delta to our cities and farms in the Central Valley. Saturday, I attended the Lindsay Chamber of Commerce annual awards banquet, and Jose Olmos was the Employee of the Year. The Gomez brothers were the Business of the Year. The Gomez brothers run the Elite Fitness Center and the McDermott Center. The Woman of the Year was Catherine Williams, and Catherine has given many, many years of service to the city of Lindsay. And Mr. Ruben Gonzalez was the Man of the Year. And Ruben does a lot of things that a lot of people don't know. He's one of those anonymous donors. And he has also been a coach for a lot of the sports teams in the city of Lindsay. And this Friday, I am attending a meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Joint Powers Authority, which basically we now manage Amtrak through the San Joaquin Valley. And our meeting purpose is to go over the budget, and also we're working on increasing the service of more trains through the San Joaquin Valley. And that's all I have. And then I want to thank Mr. Ennis for his presentation this morning. As you know, Mr. Ennis is not a man of many words. And he probably said more words today in his presentation than you'll hear the rest of the year. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shida. And that is very true. Last week we had our computer giveaway program. I know Pete was involved in that, and we got to thank the county, College of Sequoias, and Rotary Clubs of Isaiah for going together. And I think we delivered about 150, 160 computers. I delivered 7 to the Porterville area, 3 to Westfield School, 3 to Santa Fe, and 1 to Bartlett Middle School. And those kids get those computers. They're theirs. They get to take them home. They can do their homework on them and help them well into the future. So that was a good program. Last week I went by Mr. John Lujan's class at Burton Middle School. He's got a gang grant that he's working with out there, and they've got so many facets to that program they do. They call it the Green Machine. They feed the homeless. That's one of their little programs in there. They recycle. They clean up graffiti. They've got their own garden, which they took me out there and showed me their garden, which they plant every year. And so one of the little kids, I said, how do you like cooking for the... He said, have you ever peeled 50 pounds of potatoes? Boy, that's not easy. So it's really good to see these kids getting involved in the community. And this grant, whether we sponsor it or not, will continue on. That's just part of his curriculum in his class every year. He is going to continue this whether we got a grant program or not for him, because the kids enjoy it. He's even had kids come back that have graduated from Burton and are in high school and come back to visit him. So what a great plan. So that's all I have this morning. And now we'll move on to item number 3, recognizing Lorraine Cleet upon her retirement. So Supervisor Pete Vanderpool will be doing that. Lorraine, good to see you. Come on up.
All right, it is my honor on behalf of the Board of Supervisors to present Lorraine Cleek with this award. You know, I've known Lorraine pretty much my whole life, and she's been a real staple in the community of Tulare. 42 years of service with one entity is definitely a staple of that entity, I would say. And I can't even fathom 42 years because I only know 31, but that's an incredible length of service, an incredible commitment that you've made to the court system and to the county, and your impact will be felt well into the future, and your judges are going to miss you. The county's going to miss you. Dal is going to get to see a lot more of you, so I know he's very excited about that. And Lorraine reached out to me, and the court system is separated from the county. It's county affiliated, but it's state affiliated. And when Lorraine originally entered her employment, she was with the county of Tulare. And when she retired, I was congratulating her on her service and having a nice conversation with her. And she said, "Do you think I'm going to get my coaster? Am I going to get my plaque?" And I said, I'll definitely work on it and see what I can do. And I know how important it is because I know Dal has his proudly displayed in his house. And I hope that this will sit proudly next to it. And so on behalf of the County of Tulare and the Board of Supervisors, Lorraine, I congratulate you on your retirement. And I thank you for your commitment and service to Tulare County. And may the best years of your life be ahead of you. And if you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome to.
Thank you, Supervisor Vanderpool, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. I have been involved and worked in Tulare County since 1973 when I was hired as an extra help typist or intermediate clerk typist and worked for the Superior Court judges. I later transferred to the municipal court, managed the Visalia Division, and was appointed as the municipal court administrator. I remained a county employee through 1998, or June of 98, when the court unification was instituted, and subsequently appointed as the court executive officer. It was at that time the court separated from the county to fully the state, and the employees became employees of the court rather than employees of the county. Throughout all of these years, the positions I have held, it has been a pleasure to work for and in Tulare County. I want to thank the Justice Partners for those opportunities. The mutual respect and relationships that have developed with all of the court's partnering agencies and their associated staff is outstanding and quite remarkable, and not only at a personal level, but at a statewide level as well. I appreciate very much being recognized today and want to thank each of you very much.
Before you leave, Lorraine, I also want to thank you very much for your service. I think the judges are going to be lost for a while once you vacate that office. I'm sure they're going to be lost. They won't know what direction to go in. But it would be my pleasure to have a photograph with the board and you,
thank you.
for us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, let's go down and take a picture.
while she's making her way back, I do want to share something also. I think I've probably known her a little bit longer than Supervisor Vanderpool. I can remember as a very young teenager attending church, and there was always this really good-looking blonde. But I just hope I hope she's there today because I want to see this good-looking blonde. And lo and behold, it was Lorraine. So I've known you quite some time. You have been an inspiration to very, very many. I know you've worked a lot with youth and in your years, and appreciate your service. So thanks, Lorraine. But besides the court service, I know you've done a lot of good in the community. So thank you.
Lorraine, thank you so much for your years of service. And like I was telling you earlier, you were very instrumental in us getting that new, beautiful Justice Center in Porterville. So thanks to you, and have a great retirement. And you and Dal enjoy yourself because, like Pete said, your best years are ahead of you. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to presentation declaring January 2016 as National Mentoring Month in Tulare County. Mr. Vanderpool will be.
Yeah, Mike kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing standing next to me?" And I said, "I'm waiting for the next item." So, I've actually had the pleasure of serving on the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Central California Executive Board for, I think, 5 years now, or 4 or 5 years, and it's really a wonderful entity, and they've long had a presence in Fresno County, and really haven't done much in Tulare County when I first got involved. And they have expanded their service to Tulare County and really have done a great job. There are several locations in Tulare County that now have a high school bigs program, as well as the mentoring program that's very typical of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And so their impact is being felt here in Tulare County, and I know it will continue to expand. And so at this time, I'd like to present Diane Panokanam. I don't even know how to pronounce her last name. I just call her Diane. But Diane, if you would like to join me up here in the well, and so I can present this proclamation to you, declaring January 2016 is National Mentoring Month here in Tulare County. You can come around and join me in here.
Elizabeth Laura, I'm Tulare Program Manager.
Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome. Whereas National Mentoring Month provides an opportunity to recognize and commend the efforts of mentoring programs and partnerships and raise the community awareness of the importance of mentoring. And whereas the future of Tulare County rests on the positive development of its children and youth. Whereas mentors are caring and motivating individuals who are good listeners, offering support and encouragement, and provide a consistent role model in a child's life. And whereas young people greatly benefit from mentors who can encourage self-confidence and positive attitude, inspire them in their educational endeavors, educate them of the importance of healthy relationships with their friends and families, and counsel them on the challenges of drug and alcohol abuse. And whereas the County of Tulare commends Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Central California, which has made a significant contribution to our community by offering outstanding services for youth in the county. And whereas the County of Tulare also recognizes and commends all of the mentors of our community for their valuable contributions to our youth and for making a difference in their lives. And whereas National Mentoring Month increases public awareness of the need for volunteer mentors and offers recognition and gratitude to the countless men and women who donate their time as mentors throughout the United States. Now therefore be it resolved that the Tulare County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim January 2016 as National Mentoring Month in Tulare County. This proclamation is signed by Alan Nishida, myself, Phil Cox, Steve Worthley, and our chairman, Mike Ennis. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Some dots. Camera works now? Great. And if you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to do so.
Thank you very much. We are extremely honored. And it's very true. We serve 5 counties, and we were heavily focused in Fresno and Madera. And now with Pete on the board, he's a huge advocate for Tulare County. We're extremely excited. We have 7 high school bigs program in Tulare County. 3 in Cutler Rossi, 2, soon to be 3 in Dinuba. The superintendent called. He's very excited. Our grades, the children in our program, their grades are higher. Graduation rate is right now, believe it or not, 100% for our high school bigs program. All the seniors are graduating, so it's very exciting. And right now we have another high school bigs program in Tulare County as well as in Visalia. We're very excited. Mentoring is so important. When people ask me, tell us about your program, I always say, I want you to think about someone. I want each and every one of you to think about someone that was there for you, that made a difference in your life, that believed in you and gave you hope. That's what we're doing at Big Brothers Big Sister. The children in our program, many of them have been through so many struggles and challenges, and they need a big brother, a big sister, to be there for them and say, hey, you are important, we care about you, and never give up. So I'm very excited and honored to be here and be a part of this wonderful community. Thank you so much for your time and for the acknowledgement.
Mr. Chair, I'll gladly move for approval of this item.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool, second by Supervisor Cox. Cast your votes. Votes unanimous with Supervisor Worthley not being in attendance. Okay, let's move to our consent calendar, items 8 through 38. Anything that anybody
Excuse
would
me.
wish to...
Mr. Chairman, public comments?
Public comment.
Oh, sorry about that. Now we'll move to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak to the board on items not on the agenda but pertinent to the county?
Either one's fine.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Ashley Warner. I'm a legal counsel for the Matheny Tract Committee, who is involved in the matter concerning water in Matheny Tract right now. So I'm assuming that when each of you woke up this morning, you probably had the benefit of using water that met public health standards to make your coffee, to wash your hands, to comb your hair. But as we all know, Matheny Tract residents didn't this morning. They had water that was contaminated with arsenic. And so I'm here today to ask that when you go into closed session to discuss this issue, that you really take Matheny Tract residents' best interests at heart and think about how you can best serve these residents and ensure that they have access to clean, safe water as quickly as possible. And I want to say I think both the county and Matheny Tract Committee know that no separate agreement with the city of Tulare is necessary in this issue. There's a clear contract. The city has the authority it needs to provide Matheny Tract with clean water right now. However, it's our belief, based on our experience in this lawsuit, that there is an end in sight very quickly if the county is willing to help at this point. We've seen a draft of the agreement that the city is stating that it's willing to enter into with the county. It's much more scaled back than what it was proposing earlier. And having reviewed it, we do not think that it is detrimental to the interests of Matheny Tract Committee, nor does it impose risks on the county. So really here today to encourage you to please act on that. Do what you need to ensure that the residents of this community have access to potable water as soon as possible without going to trial, which is unnecessary, and to enter into an agreement with the city that is reasonable and does not impair the rights of Matheny Tract or the county. And I believe we have a representative from the committee here who wants to speak to you. And also, we're available to talk about this. So, you can feel free to contact me. Mike Spada has our contact information, or any of the committee members. Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Reinilda Palma y vengo representando a Martínez Tract.
Good morning. My name is Renilda Palma, and I am here to represent the residents of Matheny Tract.
Y el motivo de estar acá porque la comunidad está muy afectada con el agua contaminada y no nos toman en cuenta.
The reason to be here is because this community is very impacted by the matter of water, and we need to be taken into account.
Porque ya tenemos mucho tiempo luchando para pidiéndoles el agua limpia, porque la tenemos contaminada. Y pues la tubería está lista y no conectan el agua.
Yeah, we have a lot of time that we have been fighting to get clean water, and yet the whole system is ready. There's pipelines ready, and yet the water is not flowing through them.
Las necesidades son muchas en Martínez Track, pero lo más importante es el agua y la luz.
There's many needs in Matheny Tract, but the most important is water and light.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this matter is set for closed session, and after conferring with counsel, it may be advisable to discuss it. There could be an announcement, if you would like to do that now.
I think there's one more public comment related to this.
I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
Oh, you
I'm Timothy Jenny. I live in Matheny Tract, and thank you very much for all that you've done so far. I just ask you, please do your best to resolve this issue, to put us on the city water system. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak during public comment?
Well, good morning, gentlemen.
State your name and address.
My name is Renee Salazar. I'm from Lindsay, California, 495 North Elmwood. I was born in East LA in 1979, but I grew up since the age of 4 here in Tulare County in Lindsay. I was a first generation American Mexican. I worked the fields, the olive, grapes, oranges. I went to Wheatley College. I graduated. Then I studied statistics and decision sciences at Fresno State. And the reason why I'm here today is because I want you to reconsider the $60 million jail that's going to be built in Porterville. One of the main reasons is because of water. I don't know how that's going to happen. How water's going to be allocated for 500 inmates in Porterville, where you have wells running dry, towns that have toxic water. I think you need to reconsider this jail. I did the numbers, and some of them don't add up. They were in 2012 and came and spoke to you gentlemen about the proposal AB 900. And most of you didn't, only one person asked them a question about the 10 to 12% allocation, which is over $10 million. Pretty much he was just praised for having his figures right, having his T's crossed and his I's marked or something like that. But it's not. One of you also said that you would be saving $1.2 million in transportation costs. Well, you're going to incur about $6.3 million a year. So I don't understand how that's a saving. Not only that, when you build a jail, you're going to empower gangs. Right now in Tulare County, we got some, I only got 56 sections, but I got a lot to say, but we got counties, we got cities like Strathmore, Rosie, Pixley, Poplar, Tarabella. Has any of you been to Tarabella lately? Wow, it's really gone downhill. And a lot of these towns is because of lack of education. Do you know that the State Department in California, the Education Department did a study that and found that Fresno County has 1 million people and 38 of their schools are failing. And Tulare County has less than that, 500,000 people, and 36 of our schools are failing. And most of those schools that are failing are in those towns like Strathmore, Tarabella, where jurisdiction falls on the Sheriff's Department. And I think more needs to be done. I think I just want to end this with this. We need to not institutionalize people and educate people. Look at Lindsay Unified on YouTube. I recommend you guys to YouTube that. You guys will see they're doing a good job.
Wrap it up, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
They don't want to wait for the announcement.
Good morning.
Ms. Warner,
Yes, you see by four wasn't good.
I would strongly suggest that you and your clients might want to wait until after closed session.
When is closed session?
We're going to adjourn right now.
Right now. Okay, thank you.
We'll adjourn right after consent calendar.
I'm sorry, after the consent calendar.
Right, it won't take long. Charlie?
Good morning. I'll be brief. There's a clock not striking. Charlie Norman, Fire Chief, Tulare County Fire Department. I'd like to introduce two of our new internal promotions. Division Chief Jeff McLaughlin and Battalion Chief Jeff Smith.
Congratulations.
They've been with the department since its inception in 2007. This is a fine example of internal promotions, mentoring, succession planning as we enter that phase of the department. We will formally recognize them in our lieutenant and promotional ceremony on April 1st. No fooling, April 1st. Friday here in the board chambers. So I'd like to introduce these two new staff members and thank you for your support.
Good morning, board, Mr. Spada, and County Council. I really appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to just getting the department further in the fire service as we move forward here. And I'm very proud to work for the county, very proud to wear this patch and work for the individuals that work with me and for me. And thank you very much for Chief Norman, the rest of command staff's faith in me, even though I'm one of the younger members of the agency. I do really appreciate that, and I look forward to just moving the department forward. Thank you.
Thank you to the board. Can't say enough how proud I am of this promotion and looking forward to serving the community of Tulare County more. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Okay, let's move to our consent calendar. Items 8 through 38. Does anybody wish to remove anything? Or
Mr. Chair, motion to approve consent calendar.
okay, moved by Supervisor Cox. Second by Supervisor Ashida. Cast the votes are unanimous. Less Supervisor Wordley, who is gone today.
Although, Mr. Chair, I say I'm not used to voting on consent calendar, a $7.5 million construction project for our solid waste, but it was appropriate.
Okay, we will move to closed session. It shouldn't be too long, so we'll be back in a few minutes.
Chairman, you're adjourning to consider item C on your board's closed session agenda.
Okay. Okay, the board's back in session.
Mr. Chairman, in the matter of item C on your board's closed session agenda, which is the matter of City of Tulare versus Pratt Mutual Water Company et al., Tulare County Superior Court. When this suit was originally filed by the City of Tulare, the county was named as a party defendant. But after we showed the city that we were really not a proper party, the city dismissed us. We are no longer parties to the litigation. However, your board has instructed me today to file a friend of the court brief in the Superior Court in regard to the pending motion for summary judgment in the hope that this will help resolve the matter. That was done on motion of Supervisor Ashita, seconded by Supervisor Cox on a unanimous vote, Supervisor Worthley being absent.
Okay, let's move on to our timed items. Item number 6, public hearing requesting from the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance adding and amending in respect to various sections of Part 6 of the ordinance code.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Chairman Ennis, board members, Mr. Spada, and Ms. Belslane. Good to see you all. I'm Rita Woodard, Tulare County Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector, Registrar of Voters. Today I'm here as the tax collector, and that office is located at room 104E in the courthouse here in Visalia. We're here today now for the second public hearing of proposed changes to Part 6 of the County Ordinance Code pertaining to the county business license. First hearing was held January 12th, 2016. After review of the ordinance, the tax collector requests changes to assist with enforcement and to make some technical and clerical changes. Highlights of the changes are, for just general cleanup, we linked all sections of the main Section 1, which state the general provisions of the ordinance together. We took out all stated fees and made them to be by resolution of the Board of Supervisors instead of being in the ordinance. We moved all expirations of the licenses from the fiscal year to the calendar year and account for the transition by providing all current licenses that expire on June 30, 2016 be extended to December 31st, 2016 at no charge. The junk dealer's license requirement was updated to reflect current state laws. Additional changes to assist in the enforcement of the ordinance were made in the non-payment of personal property tax held in connection with the business license under the ordinance would be now grounds for revoking the license. Also, all peddlers are now required a license for each individual vehicle used, and that license is to be displayed, and the peddler is to carry identification enabling the county enforcement people to determine if, in fact, the peddler is licensed. So at this time, we request the board hold a public hearing and then waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance adding, amending, and repealing various sections of Part 6 of Ordinance Code pertaining to business licenses and regulations, and direct the clerk to publish a summary of the ordinance and post a full copy after adoption as required by law. Okay.
Hey, thank you, Rita. Any questions?
Just a quick statement. I want to thank Rita for making this agenda item. The executive summary was good. This is 190 pages here. When I opened this up, I thought, oh my gosh. But having the executive summary here and then being able to flip through, so I just want to thank you, Rita, for making this easier for us here. If I would have had to read through every 190 pages looking for the the changes.
Oh,
It
you
would
could
have
do
been-
it, Phil.
It would have been tedious. I would have done it, but it was nice having this and then flipping through, so thank you.
I have to
That's
give
what-
credit to Hailey Wallace for her good work on this. She went through those 190 pages really good.
Thank you, Hailey.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing none, close the public hearing, bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve.
Moved by Supervisor Cox.
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Supervisor Vanderpool. All the vote is unanimous, less Supervisor Wordley, who is not in attendance. Okay, Rita, item number 7, public hearing, request from Auditor, Controller, Tax Collector to approve the proposed fee schedule.
Well, with the changes made in the business license ordinance, the tax collector took opportunity to review all the fees and bring them in under one time on the agenda for the board. Made it much easier for us and for you, I hope. The main updates are the new fee calculations have removed the fees set by other departments from the tax collector fee that's collected, and they collect them directly. And then we also removed the fees that can be collected on actual cost by the state code so that you don't have to approve something already approved by the state. Additionally, fees were added for new collection processes. The tax collector now has a DMV vessel hold process for boats. People cannot pay their state license or transfer title until their personal property taxes is paid. There's also a new hearing fee and duplicate certificate fee added to reflect the changes from the ordinance and to help offset the cost of these services. So the approval of the attached fee schedule will have little effect on the revenue of the county due to the limited number of business licenses that are required and the small changes that are made in the amounts. Please note that on page 2 there is a typo, and the peddler vehicle fee is $25, not $50 as listed on the page. Okay. So we request that the proposed fee schedule for the tax collector be approved.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a quick question, Rita. You know, I looked at the attached fee schedule, and if you look at the vast majority of the costs, they're pretty much cost recovery, aside from one that really kind of glared out to me, it only being a 49% cost recovery. We're only recovering half of our costs, and I know it doesn't happen very often, but is there a reason that we went so low on the percentage recovered on that specific item?
Belt-oriented?
Yeah, for a hardship waiver. I mean, I'd rather...
Actually, that was an estimate, and it was based on one occurrence.
Only one, yeah.
And it was for an out-of-state hearing that was proposed, and so I didn't think it was fair to be the full amount,
Okay.
especially for locals.
Okay, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Heidi.
And I also noticed that most of these haven't been changed since 2004, so.
That's because they were in the ordinance.
Right.
And not by resolution.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak to this issue, come forward. I don't think Bryce is. Seeing no one, close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for further.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of this item.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool. Second by Supervisor Cox. All those in favor? It's unanimous with less Supervisor Wordley, who is in attendance.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Okay, let's move on to item 39, Solid Waste Closure Operations Fund. Bryce?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bryce Howard, Director of Solid Waste. So this is a fairly straightforward, actually not. The state of California never makes anything very straightforward. We're just asking for some money to be transferred from our closure fund into a closure operating fund of $3 million at this time, and then asking for the auditor on our behalf to move more money as the project moves along. The project was on consent. It's about an $8 million project. It's pretty straightforward. The complication of this process, 3-4 years ago, the state wanted us to actually close part of Visay landfill. We didn't have the cash to do it because they require you to use your own cash you can't get money out of your own closure fund to use it. You have to certify that closure, then you go get the money to pay yourself back. So at that time, the department didn't have enough cash to actually do the work. So the department started thinking, now, what are we going to do about that? So we went back to the state, and eventually we were able to get from the state the ability to use progress payments and to come up with a progress payment schedule. So we are now releasing the money ahead of time. We don't have to use our own operating cash, but actually the cash we have in reserves. And so it really helps us out with our cash flow. It was a big, big change for us. As it turns out, today we actually have enough cash to actually fund it ourselves if we wanted to out of the 045. But why do that if you already have the money set aside? So that's what this item's really about, is for that approval for you.
Okay. Any questions?
Nope.
Well, just a comment. Nice compliment to yourself, Bryce, on having enough cash in the solid waste entity. You're doing a great job, and keep up the great work. And I think this makes a lot of sense. It's kind of one of those things that deconfuses what's mandated by the state. So.
Right. Thank you. Our one comment on that, our cash situation has really started to really improve just this year. Bringing Vicey on full time, we've seen a dramatic increase in cash in the last 6 months. Yep. We're in really good financial position right now. We're sort of in a race to try and get the money to do some expansions that we need to do in about 4 or 5 years, but we're definitely ahead of that schedule. Yep. So things are looking pretty good.
Well-deserved compliment, Bryce.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Cox. All in favor, vote. Okay, it's unanimous with less Supervisor Worthley, who is absent. Okay, move on to item number 40, 2006 Community Transportation Infrastructure Program.
Good morning, Chairman Ennis, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Spada, Ms. Bales-Lang, Ben Ruiz, Interim Director of the Resource Management Agency. Today, the item before you today is a proposal to you for some community projects that we have planned for construction in this upcoming calendar year. These projects are funded through our Measure R local transportation funds that we receive from TCAG, and so I want to present that to you today. An overview of our presentation, I'll go over our strategic management system, community outreach that we perform to develop some of these projects. Then I'll go into the proposed community projects, talk about some of our future plans for complete streets, and then I'll also touch on some of our other upcoming construction projects that we have for this calendar year. Chairman Ennis touched on a few of those, and then I'll go over some of our recently completed construction projects. Our fiscal manager, Ms. Sofia Almanza, will go over the funding for these projects, and then I'll go over our requested action, some acknowledgments, and then opportunity for comments and questions. The strategic management system, really through the leadership of our CAO, it's the implementation of the 2006 strategic business plan that was adopted by your Board of Supervisors, and it's really based on a business model where, we're open for business. We're trying to be proactive. What we're trying to do with these community projects in particular is to create public value through constructing roads, curb, gutter, and sidewalk for pedestrians, bus shelters for transit riders, to start chipping away and creating the conditions by which private companies or businesses can develop in these unincorporated areas and create jobs. So that's what we're trying to do with these projects. And how do we measure our performance and results? It's through the in-ground construction of these projects. Community involvement. Back in 2013, the Resource Management Agency undertook an aggressive campaign to update the community plans in our unincorporated communities. That's part of the implementation of the general plan, which was adopted. Since then, we've adopted 9 community plans. As part of that process, we've also adopted complete streets policies for each of these communities, and that entailed a lot of community outreach, our staff going out into the communities, a lot of times in the evenings, and basically requesting from the community, like, what are your needs? Where would you like to see curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements? What roads need to be fixed? And through that process, we've identified some priority projects. So what we have here, I won't go, I have a separate slide to touch on most of these projects, but Through that community outreach, we developed some priority projects from the community. A lot of those are along the main streets of these communities, where we've developed essentially design plans for curb, gutter, sidewalk, and road improvements along some of the major corridors in these communities. Now, the way we strategize this is those projects are going to be prioritized for funding through federal and state sources through the ATP program. And what we're doing here with our local Measure R funds is trying to get to some of the other projects, some of the smaller projects that aren't as competitive at the state and federal level, try to address some of those needs that the communities have expressed. This is just a map with a location of the projects that we're proposing. What we try to do is, spread the projects throughout the county. We have several of these projects that we're proposing. These are basically safety-type projects. This consists of driver feedback signs in front of Woodville Elementary School in the community of Woodville. Again, these were desired projects from the community and the school, and the feedback signs, they basically tell you how fast you're going as you're approaching the school, and they are effective in slowing people down. These types of projects, because they're more safety-related as opposed to constructing curb, gutter, and sidewalk that would encourage people to walk, these projects aren't as competitive at the state and federal level for ATP funds. So we thought, from a strategic standpoint, let's use our local funds to take care of some of these needs. Another similar project, this one's in the community of Plainview, in front of Sunnyside Elementary School. Again, these are safety-type projects in front of the school, driver feedback, safety devices. Again, another similar project. This one's in the Lemon Cove area. This one, in addition to the driver feedback signs, also includes the rapid flashing beacons, which these are installed on either side of the road at crosswalk locations to let the people driving vehicles know that there's children or people in the crosswalks. This is a little more extensive project in the community of Pixley. We recently completed a Safe Routes to School project from Plain Street to School Street that included construction of curb, gutter, and sidewalk on both sides of the street. This project will improve the roadway, so it's a pavement resurfacing project. The Pixley Public Utilities District has plans to install a new water line along this corridor, and so our pavement rehabilitation project will come in after the fact so they don't tear up our new pavement. We're also proposing to do some pavement rehabilitation work here along School Street, but historically in the past we've used these local Measure R funds to primarily do road pavement rehabilitation work, but we're taking the opportunity here to also infill some locations where there's sidewalk missing to complete a path, essentially along School Street to the school in the northeast part of Pixley, and also to address some ADA compliance issues. So we're trying to stretch these dollars to take care of some of our other needs in addition to the road repairs. This is a project in the community of Alpaw. As part of the new school in Alpaw, the school project constructed a curb, gutter, and sidewalk along the east side of Road 38 and constructed about half of the roadway. The other half of the roadway is in pretty bad shape. So through this project, we'll propose to basically complete the other half of the roadway and do some intersection improvements, fixing crosswalks, curb ramps, to address those needs. Yes.
Mr. Chair, real quick, just a question on this. I was actually out last week at Alpaw School, and the superintendent and I were walking around the project, and across the street, right there where we were actually planning in the red to do this work, there are I think 5 lots or 8 lots that they're actually going to be building a solar farm on. In the very near future or at the end of this project being completed. So I would just advise you that before we begin this project or as we construct the project to coordinate with the school district, because with all that construction traffic being right there, we might be doing a little bit of damage to the newly completed work by RMA. So just want to point that out.
Yes, we'll take that into consideration. This is a project in the community of Goshen, again, some street repair work that was identified through our community plan update and complete streets policies process, taking the opportunity to not only fix the road, but also infill in locations where there's curb gutter missing, making sure that the curb ramps along this stretch of roadway, of Road 68, are ADA compliant. And then this is a project in the community of Traver. We've done some work there recently. This project will consist of doing some pavement resurfacing work here along Zante Drive, between Kitchen Drive and Jacobs Drive. We were recently awarded an ATP grant to construct curb gutter and sidewalk along Jacobs Drive from Burke to Canal. Our previous project constructed a path from Merritt along Canal over here to Avenue 368. And as part of this project, we propose to extend that path along Avenue 368 with new curb gutter and sidewalk over to the east side of the school where there's a new medical clinic in place. So you can see here through several projects, we're creating a good network connecting the community with the school and the medical clinic. And this is a project in Ducor, again, another safety type project, installing driver feedback signs. These projects are, relatively inexpensive. They run from $30,000 to $40,000 to install these signs. And then another similar one in Terabella, again at the request of the community. This is a rapid flashing beacon project where we'd improve the crosswalk location and install these rapid flashing beacons. And then this is a project in the community of Terabella. It involves pavement resurfacing for approximately half a mile of road from Avenue 96 to Avenue 100. It also includes a little bit of curb gutter and sidewalk here at the intersection, constructing ADA compliant curb ramps, and a little bit of work here along Avenue 96. So that touches on most of the projects. We also have a project in Strathmore where we're going to have spot repairs on various roads in the community of Strathmore and also in the community of London. We're going to do some spot repairs on some roads that need some work there as well, including some work in front of the new library there in London. So that kind of touches on the projects that we're proposing for our local Measure R transportation funds. For the future, this is a proposal that we have into TCAG to fund our Complete Streets Phase 3 is what we're calling it. The Phase 1 and 2 funding were instrumental in completing the community Complete Streets policies for the 9 communities I previously mentioned. So if approved for Complete Streets Phase 3, we'll prepare similar policies and plans for the communities of Three Rivers, Woodville, East Orosi, Poplar, Alpaugh, Ellensworth, and Ivanhoe. And so these Complete Streets policies and the development of these projects are instrumental as we move forward in applying for ATP funding. So it makes these projects so much more competitive, and we're starting to see the results of that. This is just a listing of some of our upcoming construction projects for this calendar year. These are funded through various sources of funding, so this isn't necessarily our local Measure R funding, but some of these are funded through TCAG, through Measure R regional funds. You'll see our big projects on there are Avenue 280 and Avenue 416 widening. The 416 widening project is essentially underway. AID is currently relocating some of their facilities. In a couple of weeks here, we'll start clearing the right-of-way so that the other utilities can relocate and we can start some of the paving work later in the year. Avenue 280, we're aggressively trying to obtain the right-of-way to get that project underway. I understand we have an agreement signed with one of the property owners, so hopefully the agreements start to trickle in so we can acquire the right-of-way for that project. We have a couple of community projects that'll start here in a couple of weeks. One in Tullyville and Terabella. Those are safe routes to school type projects. A couple of our bridge projects are wrapping up. Our Road 224 Deer Creek Bridge near Terabella will be complete here in the next couple months, as well as our Road 182 bridge over Deep Creek. And then we have a couple other bridge projects planned for later this fall. And then we have a handful of safety-type projects totaling about $4 million. And then, of course, our flood control projects. The big one being the Cottonwood Creek Realignment Project, which we have planned for later this year. We're pursuing some alternative sources of funding for that project. And so we're hopeful that we can get some alternative sources of funding for that project as well. Our bus shelters, these are funded through our transit program. We have 10 shelters planned here to start being installed here this next month. They were delivered here about a week or two ago, and so they're being assembled at our road yards. And we've identified the ones that are on some of our more popular routes, as well as some of the ones that we can easily install without having to deal with too much ADA compliance type issues or right-of-way issues. So we have a couple of shelters right up in here. You probably can't read the slide, but it's in Sultana. These two shelters actually are companion shelters. There's one on one side of the road and one on the opposite side of the road for east and westbound traffic. We have a couple more shelters along Avenue 416, one near Road 128, and one on Eddy Road. Again, there's existing shelters on one side of the road, and these are going to be the companion shelters to be on the opposite side of the road. This is for Route 10, one of our more popular routes. Our other popular route is Route 20, down here through the 99 corridor. So we're going to install a shelter in Tipton on Burnett Road near the Tipton overpass. And then we have a couple of shelters in Pixley. These were identified through our community outreach, through our Complete Streets process. So we'll have a couple new shelters there to serve our users, and then one also in the community of Early Mart on Sierra near State Street. The other two shelters, one is in Terabella near Carl Smith Elementary School, and one in the community of Plainview on Road 196 and Avenue 195. So the plan is to start getting those in place this coming month, and I think by March they'll all be in place. As part of your agenda today on the consent calendar, there was 5 notice of completions or acceptance of projects, and that's these projects here. Community project in Rich Grove, where we constructed part of a street in front of a new park there in Rich Grove. Safety projects along one of our more dangerous routes in Tulare County, Reservation Road. A small bridge project east of Tulare. And then 2 pavement overlay projects, which are road resurfacing projects. These were funded through local Measure R funds. What I'll point out there is we're currently collaborating with TCAG on a farm-to-market program that would address some of our high-priority farm-to-market routes that may include an advance of up to $20 million to do similar types of projects. So you may hear more about that here in the coming months. With that, I'll turn it over to our fiscal manager, Ms. Sophia Almanza. She'll talk about the funding.
Good morning, Board, CAO, County Council. Sophia Almanza, Resource Management Agency. So the slide I'm going to be talking about is local Measure R funding. The county receives approximately $4 to $5 million of Measure R local funds annually. These funds are used for maintenance of community and rural roadways. I have trouble saying that. The projects are selected for these are coordinated through community plan updates and complete street policies, along with RMA team meetings to discuss funding availability and ensure responsible spending. The new RMA is big on team. We're big on communicating not only with the community, but within each other. So public works, planning, we all had a big involvement in this. Also, at the request of the board, consideration was taken into account for addressing safety concerns in the unincorporated communities. So this slide represents the disbursement of Measure R funds. So just kind of wanted to recap how the Measure R funds work. So in 2006, Tulare County voters approved the half-cent sales tax to be used for transportation purposes. So TCAG receives the sales tax revenue and distributes the actual revenues for local programs. So that's here, TCAG receiving 35% of actual revenues. And then it's distributed to our local programs, which would be over here. And the formula used for distributing the local program funds is 50% is based on population, 25% on maintained miles, and 25% is daily vehicle mileage usage. So then that's how it's determined for each jurisdiction, the County of Tulare being one of those jurisdictions. So then when the County of Tulare receives its funding, it goes into our road fund for it to be used for transportation purposes. And as I had mentioned earlier, it's between $4 to $5 million we receive every year. So then what happens is RMA, through community outreach and safety assessments and your board's request, we select the projects that are going to be provided in each of the communities of the districts. So then the local programs are spread throughout the district, and these 4 districts are the districts that have been selected with the projects that Ben had just presented. So that's my part of my presentation. Is there any questions?
Good to see District 3 not represented. That means more road work for the rest of us.
My complaint
well, that's
letter
mostly
is already
primarily
in the
because
mail.
it's in the city of Visalia. So the city of Visalia being another jurisdiction that does receive Measure R local funds. But
Although there have been a couple of Measure R projects of the local money in the southern part of the district, which were heavily traveled areas of the roads going out to all the way into Kings County, though. So we got our little bit last year, I think it was.
Okay.
Thought I'd point that out.
Okay.
If I may say, Mr. Chairman, that a lot of this work, this good work that is being done, does have a positive effect throughout the county. So District 3 is the beneficiary of safe travel and commerce moving effectively as a result of this comprehensive approach.
I'm not buying that at all.
Okay.
It's my duty.
I'll give it back to Ben.
Okay, so with that, our request is for your board to receive this report regarding our plans for the 2016 Community Transportation Infrastructure Program and to direct staff to take appropriate action. And with that, I'd like to thank your board for your direction and your support. Part of our strategic management system is to be responsive to your Board of Supervisors, and we feel like hopefully with these community projects, that's being responsive to the types of projects you're looking for. Thanks to our CAO, Mr. Spada, for his leadership and for his guidance. And of course, these projects wouldn't be possible without the funding that we receive from TCAG. So a lot of thanks to TCAG and their board and their staff for helping us on these projects. And of course, the input we receive from the local communities and stakeholders. We're hoping these projects are reflective of some of their needs and they can be proud of these projects. And our RMA staff for their hard work, attending these public meetings sometimes in the evening and for putting these projects together. So I'd like to thank them for that.
I'll echo your acknowledgments and thanks. I think it's really great that RMA staff has worked as hard as they have to put this together. You guys have done a fantastic job, and I think that we see a list of projects that are a direct reflection of community outreach, community engagement, and that's really what being a responsive county government is all about, is doing work that reflects the public's desires and needs. And so I really compliment you and all of the RMA team for that work. So
Thank you.
Supervisor Yoshida?
I have a question. I'd like to see us come back with a report, or maybe a statement, of, in our unincorporated communities, how much road work by community is needed to be done within the confines of those communities. Because after this many years, we should be darn near caught up in all our unincorporated communities on road repair.
We can certainly prepare a report.
So.
Yeah,
I
there's a
don't
lot
think
of.
so. I think we scratched the surface of the worst, maybe.
Well, I'd like to see where we stand.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ishida, what you're asking is an assessment of the existing condition of the roads and see what would need to be addressed in terms of repair, reconstruction, upgrade, and then if it's feasible to put some kind of a dollar figure associated with each area, that would be helpful. Is that a fair
Yes, that would be very helpful.
We can do that.
Supervisor Cox?
I have two things, and I, ditto to what Supervisor Vanderpool said. You have done a great job. I know the outreach took place, which was great, which is one of the questions we had, make sure the citizens are telling us where do they want this work to go. As we're looking at these communities, though, putting these assessments together, I, for one, I'm glad to see we've got in these community projects a wide array of things that are being done.
Mhm.
We're not just going in, throwing in curb gutter sidewalks in all these communities. I think, for me personally, that would be a huge waste of money, of these monies, to throw curb gutter and sidewalks in all these places. There's no storm drains. There's no place to drain the water to. The roads need to be fixed. We promised roads. We need to, I think, for me, we need to be focusing on roads. You live anywhere else in, an incorporated, unincorporated areas with building standards, they build the curb gutter sidewalk with the project. So, for me, if you go in and start figuring, well, $50 a foot for sidewalk, you're going to be looking at hundreds of millions of dollars where these communities don't have sidewalks. I think that's best left to safe routes to schools, other funding sources like that. Measure R does not have enough money to put curb gutter and sidewalk, even if we took it all and put it into curb gutter and sidewalk in these unincorporated communities. So I'm hoping that we're focusing on the basic transportation needs, because there's still some roads where the road doesn't go to, property lines, and you're driving on mud roads still. So one question, that's my statement. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question. On the proposed community projects for 2016, who's doing the work?
As far as the design work, it'll be prepared by our RMA staff. And
who's doing the actual road work?
Some of it will be bid out, and some of it will be the small, like the safety feedback signs. Those can be performed by our road yard staff. And as far as the overlay, the pavement work, we'll contract that out to.
So do we have a threshold of where, if it gets to $100,000, $200,000, we just contract that? The reason I asked that is because we made promises also to the industry when we were working on Measure R that this was going to create work for them, that we weren't building this to be our own little kingdom of work that we'd be performing, that we would be going out and using the private sector to do some of these projects. So is there a threshold that you use to say once it gets to this level, we're going to contract it? How do you do that?
A lot of the pavement rehabilitation work, we're really limited through AB 720. So we contract out pretty much most of all of our like overlays and pavement rehabilitation work. We do some in-house if it's minor in nature. And again, we feel like those small, like safety type projects, we can do those quickly and efficiently. We do those with our staff, but some of the bigger projects that get up over $100,000, we contract most of those out, if not all of them.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few brief remarks. First of all, Ben, I want to thank you for bringing forward this project to give the board a strategic glimpse into what the work plan is this year in terms of trying to get projects into the ground. Thank you for your team and in putting that together in a rather rapid manner. I'd also like to thank Sophia for her work, and I think this is important to bear in mind, which is a defining difference in the way we operated before. Every 2 weeks, the project management teams that are working on these projects get a real-time spreadsheet to see what their project balances are, so they can better manage the flow of these projects and not get into any kind of difficulty with regard to whether there needs to be an additional contribution for the projects. That's a huge efficiency measure so that there's more funding available for more projects, so thank you for that. Then I'd also like to thank Mr. Coyne. Mr. Coyne, you are the project management breakthrough artist, and I would appreciate or want to acknowledge everything that you do, because Mr. Coyne is the person that really is the closer for many, many of these projects, and I just wanted to point that out. So thank you, Ben, and the team. I appreciate very much all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Ishida, did you want to say anything else? Or?
I want to thank you for your report. It seems like this curb and gutter and a lot of this work is done in relationship to safe route to schools. what appears to be, and Mr. Supervisor Cox brought up a good point about the curbs and gutters, but I think we've made a lot of progress. I drive through my unincorporated communities, and overall, most roads are in a lot better shape than they've ever been in. So maybe I have a false impression in my communities. I think we're getting pretty close to getting to the point that we can say that we've accomplished our goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for the report. Appreciate the update. What I would like to see too is, with this overlay problem we got where we can only do like 30% and then we have to bill out. In many cases, I think we could go out on a lot of these country roads and do the old blade patch like we used to do years ago and get by. When you get a road eat up with potholes, just go out and fix it with blade patch. It's a cheaper solution, and I hope that we're looking at that in many of our cases out there.
Yeah, we're definitely still doing a lot of that with our road crews, isolated road repairs that they can do, more efficiently and quickly.
Right.
When you get into the more major type work overlays,
Right. If it's a big major highway where a lot of people, but most of these county roads, I think blade patch works just fine. So, thanks for your report. I don't think this is an action item. I think this is just.
No, it's up to report.
Is it? Okay.
Move approval.
Moved by Supervisor
Second.
Yoshida, second by Supervisor Cox. Unanimous, less Supervisor Worthley, who is absent today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, let's move on to item number 41, approve agricultural conservation easement program.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, I will present this report for your consideration. The matter before you is a proposed agricultural conservation easement program. Have a technical difficulty, so why don't you just address the PowerPoint slide there. Next slide. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman, we did that on purpose to show our technical skills.
Did better than I could have done.
All right. I'd like to give you a brief overview of what the discussion will entail. The first item will be to review the general plan update litigation, specifically the stipulated settlement and the court judgment out of which this proposed program has grown. Number two, I will go through key settlement requirements, which includes the California Resource Agency's, or CRC's, farmland maps. I will next address the California Environmental Quality Act in terms of the significant impact analysis which applies to this program. And then finally, I would like to point out that in connection with the proposed program, the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, it must be in substantial conformance with Attachment G. Attachment G is an attachment to the stipulated agreement that was adopted by your board and was reduced to a court judgment. The next item will be the proposed ACEP itself. Then I will walk through a timeline and recommendation from our Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee. Then I will identify comments from APAC as well as some brief county responses. I will turn then to options for your consideration, and finally wrap up with requested action. Next slide, please. All right, beginning at the beginning, in terms of the general plan update litigation. On August 28th, 2012, your board adopted the General Plan Update, or GPU, Update 2023. On September 28th, 2012, the GPU was challenged in court by the Sierra Club. After several years of vigorous litigation and intensive settlement negotiations, which produced a multi-page technical document, on February 24th, 2015, your board approved a stipulated agreement. On March 2nd, 2015, the Superior Court of Tulare County entered a court judgment. This documentation is referenced in your agenda item, specifically in Attachment 1. Next slide, please. In brief, the stipulated agreement, which was then validated through a court judgment, has 10 specific performance requirements of the settlement. Number one, the county was to prepare a countywide climate action plan revision or update. We have our consultant working with our council, which is going to complete that plan within several weeks. The next obligation was to prepare a dairy climate action plan. That has been prepared, and it should be circulated for public review in the very near future. Thirdly, a solar installation ordinance was required. That has been adopted by your board. Next, a diesel truck idling ordinance was required. That has been adopted by your board. A recharge basin consultation process policy was required. That has been adopted by your board. A zero low emission fleet replacement policy was required. That has been adopted by your board. A flood information website was required. We have it online right now. We will be making some more revisions, but in effect, that requirement is done. As a subsidiary requirement to the flood information, as a result of the housing element being recently adopted, within 1 year, we are required to update the safety element. That is an obligation 1 year hence. With regard to the agricultural conservation easement program, again, that is a function of Attachment G, which is attached to the stipulated agreement, and that matter is before you today. In addition, an independent source review and CEQA policy was required. That has been adopted by your board. And then finally, the new town land use review policy was required. That has been adopted by your board. So in sum, out of 10 matters that were required to be fulfilled within 1 year of execution of the agreement, we have 8 completed. 1 is before you today, and 1 should be completed by the end of the month. For reference, again, Attachment 1 of the agenda item contains that stipulated agreement. Next slide, please. All right, there are 3 essential requirements, key broad requirements with respect to this settlement. Number 1, the county is required to refer to the California Resource Agency maps. There are 3 particular maps: prime farmland, unique farmland, and farmland of statewide importance. I'm going to briefly review or state to you those requirements from the California Resources Agency through its Department of Conservation. With respect to the prime farmland map, this is farmland with the best combination of physical and chemical features able to sustain long-term agricultural production. This land has a soil quality, growing season, and moisture supply needed to produce sustained high yields. Turning to the farmland of statewide importance, according to the CRC, this is farmland similar to prime farmland, but with minor shortcomings, such as greater slopes or less ability to store soil moisture. And finally, unique farmland, again, according to the CRC, this is farmland of lesser quality soils used for the production of the state's leading agricultural crops. This land is usually irrigated. Now again, this is our point of reference that we have to look at these maps to identify whether farmland is triggered within this proposed program. The next important item that needs to be addressed through the implementation of this program is the California Environmental Quality Act. And this is very familiar to you in that the county must do a significant impact analysis with regard to any private discretionary project that is required: a subdivision map, a use permit, a rezone, a community plan amendment, something like that. We have to do a CEQA analysis compared to these three maps to see if there is a significant impact. If there's a significant impact, then there is a trigger that there must be some kind of mitigation. If there is no significant impact, then there is no trigger in order to require any type of mitigation in terms of agricultural mitigation land. The next feature of this settlement, which is critically important, and again, this comes from page 7 of the stipulated agreement itself, and it states as follows. The county will, within 1 year from the date of execution of settlement, consider adoption of an agricultural conservation easement program in substantial conformance with Attachment G. As I will discuss shortly, the proposed program mirrors Attachment G. APAC has had some comments where they would like some deviations in effect from Attachment G, and that will be, I'm sure, the substance of our discussion today. Next slide, please. All right, let's turn now to the proposed agricultural conservation easement program. For your reference, this is Attachment 2 to your agenda item. There are specifically 10 items. I will go through them very briefly. First one is the intent. The intent section of the proposed program, which is consistent with Attachment G, is that there must be a referral to the CRC's farmland mapping program. I referred to those three maps already. Secondly, there must be CEQA evaluation in keeping with the significant impact analysis. And most importantly, the ag conservation easement is not the exclusive option by which to address mitigation of any significant impacts. The next item of the program, again consistent with Attachment G, is that there must be an agricultural conservation easement program. In this program, criteria must be established for ag easements, and it's repeated, CEQA and the DOC mapping, Department of Conservation mapping, are relevant considerations that must be reviewed. Number 3, types of mitigation. Again, it's a function of an impact under CEQA, and to address a significant impact, a conservation easement may be used or some other mechanism. Slide, please. Now, if I may go through the criteria, which again mirror the criteria that were set forth in Attachment G, that was part of the stipulated agreement, that is now a court judgment. First, preferably, an easement must be located in San Joaquin County. Other suitable lands may be encumbered subject to approval of the Board of Supervisors. Second, the easement will include farmland based on CRC's mapping and monitoring program, and I went through with you the 3 types of maps. Third, land under easement must be substantially of the same quality, have or could have access to water, and be feasibly cultivated. Fourth, there must be a minimum of a 1-to-1 ratio or functional equivalent to loss of defined agricultural lands. In terms of functional equivalent, let me say this. It is not specifically identified or defined in the Attachment G nor in the proposed program, but let me say this. In general terms, functional equivalent means that you're using a different method to achieve the same result, which would be to preserve ag farmland that is in danger of being eliminated. By reference, we can look to what is done in terms of the biological area or in the wetlands area where we have the concept of functional equivalent. And essentially, there, what you're looking at is that if you can replace farmland, if you can upgrade farmland, if you can restore it to a more suitable quality, that could be viewed within the concept of functional equivalent. Again, it's not defined, but moving forward on a case-by-case basis, we can look at that. Or, as I may suggest later, you could direct that we develop program guidelines that may flesh out some of this material in order to give greater clarity. Moving on now to the next slide, item 5, the program process. Pursuant to the Attachment G, the applicant shall pay a reasonable fee to a qualifying entity for the cost of administering, monitoring, and enforcing the easement or interest. We'll get into qualifying entity later. Tulare County can require payment of additional fee to cover costs in this regard. I assure you Tulare County will be very reasonable. Its fees will not be high. We will ensure that this process appropriately addressed in terms of low fees. Moving now to the qualifying entity. The qualifying entity shall hold the easement. The choice will be made by the Board of Supervisors. The county shall hold the easement if the qualifying entity refuses to hold the easement. There will be some discussion with regard to what constitutes a qualifying entity. The specifics of that definition are not in there other than it needs to be a 501c3 corporation. It must be nonprofit. But the board makes a decision, and on a case-by-case basis, we will do, as staff, the evaluation to determine whether the entity is qualified. Next, legal instruments. The basic requirement is that there must be a legal description, the document must be capable of recorded, and there are a number of prohibitions. Let me go through them right now. According to the program, as well as Attachment G, the document, the legal instrument, the easement, the deed restriction, whatever way we want to characterize it, shall prohibit any activity that substantially impairs or diminishes the agricultural productivity of the land. However, all activities or land uses currently allowed under the county's agricultural zoning designations will be allowed on mitigation land. So what we're saying here is that even though an ag easement may possibly be encumbered on the property, it doesn't wipe out the allowed uses under the zoning ordinance. But that has to be read in conjunction with the next prohibition in order to make sense out of it. Further, it shall prohibit new residential other than the single-family dwellings allowed by law and by permit in the applicable ag zone and or commercial development on ag mitigation land that is not directly needed for ag production regardless of existing zoning. So, if there are allowed uses in the zoning ordinance, they cannot impair the protection of ag land. And we're prohibiting residential, we're looking at commercial industrial, and if that land is not needed in order to allow productive capability, then those uses will be allowed. So the bottom line is that land rights or land uses are not being eliminated, but they must be folded into protection of the easement and still allow those uses to occur. Next slide, please. Qualifying entity. Basic requirement as set forth in the stipulated agreement is that it must be a Section 501c3 entity operating in Tulare County. The qualifying entity will monitor, enforce, and report with regard to its activities involving the ag easement. It's also stated in this section that the county, in many instances in this document, may be a cold holder or a backup beneficiary. And as I get into some of the responses to the comments, it appears that there's an optional opportunity for the county either to be a co-holder, and that would be a decision of the board, or a backup beneficiary in the event that the qualifying entity ceases to do business or in some way relinquishes its obligation to continue its responsibilities. Number 8, the proposed program includes a monitoring, enforcing, and reporting program, and both the qualifying entity and RMA share these duties in the program, and again, it's consistent with Attachment G. Staffing, RMA will process the application, but it will coordinate with the CAO and the BO and the Board of Supervisors. That's stated in Attachment G, it's stated in the program, and it should be there to ensure that both the CAO and the board ensure that this program is effectively administered. Finally, with regard to processing, a very modest fee has been established for the processing of any ag conservation easement at $510 by the board. With regard to the monitoring, enforcing, and reporting fee, that is a to-do item in that RMA will conduct an evaluation and see what is an appropriate fee and bring it back to the board. Finally, RMA, per Attachment G in the program, will conduct an evaluation as to a possible in lieu fee. What's an in lieu fee? This is a substitute for the ag easement. And again, this information is contained in Attachments 2 and Attachment 3 of your agenda item. Next slide. Timeline and APAC recommendation. Now, before I delve into this, let me make a preliminary comment. I do want to thank APAC itself, as well as the Farm Bureau, and other interested parties for this very lengthy discussion of the concept of ag easements in general, and in particular with respect to the matter that is before you today. If I may just run through briefly the opportunities that were presented for discussion. Turning to calendar year 2013, in March of 2013, there was a discussion at APAC to discuss the general plan update implementation, and a part of that discussion including ag easements. In June of 2013, the work plan of APAC was included, which included the discussion of ag easements. In July of 23, there was a work plan discussed at APAC, including ag easements. In August of 23, ag land protection was discussed, whereby there were hundreds of pages of documents distributed from a multitude of jurisdictions where we walked through buffers, easements, and mitigation. In October of 23, that was all put together in a matrix for further discussion at APAC in terms of ag land protection through many, many jurisdictions throughout California, including many of the local jurisdictions in the Valley. In 2014, we didn't discuss that because, as you recall, the litigation really heated up and there were extensive negotiations in closed session with regard to this matter, and the result was that in early 2015, the general plan update litigation was resolved by a stipulated agreement and a court judgment. Following that, the stipulated agreement and court judgment were discussed at APAC in March 2015. The entire settlement was discussed. In April 2015, again it was discussed, including ag easements. In May 2015, the settlement was discussed, including ag easements. In July 2015, there was a settlement and ag easement discussion. In December 2015, the settlement again was discussed, including ag easements. 2016. In January 2016, again, we had the settlement discussion, and we had an APAC recommendation. Next slide, please. Now let's turn to verbatim the recommendation that was provided by APAC. Quote, the Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee requests and recommends to the Board of Supervisors that the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, prior to approval by you, be sent back to APAC for final review. APAC would like to submit and have the Board of Supervisors consider the attached letters as recommended changes to ACFP, and we will walk through those comments and responses today. As a note, the letters were submitted by the Tulare County Farm Bureau and APAC member Scott Spear. We appreciate those letters. They provide adequate and very effective input, and the responses to these comments will be provided briefly in slides 12 through 16. With regard to a second note, APAC's recommendation is addressed through the options and requested action slides, namely slides 17 through 18. All right, turning now to APAC comments and county responses. All right, with regard to the Tulare County Farm Bureau comments, again, we appreciate them very much because they were helpful to this process. In connection with comment number 1, Farm Bureau requested that the voluntary use of conservation easements be conducted. Our response is staff has supported and continues to support very strongly the voluntary use of conservation easements. To refine that statement, let me say that with regard to Attachment G and the proposed program, which staff asserts is consistent with the agreement, the farmland mapping and CEQA are relevant considerations to evaluate in order to make the ultimate determination of whether mitigation is required or whether an ag conservation easement is available for discussion with the applicant. Comment number 2, a qualified land trust should serve as qualifying entity. Staff strongly agrees with that. Number 3, they oppose the county as a co-holder of the easement. Response is, after reviewing more carefully the language that is set forth in Attachment G, as well as in the proposed program, there is the option for the county to serve as a backup beneficiary. Number 4, oppose land held outside Tulare County. I've read to you very clearly that Attachment G, as well as the proposed program, says that somewhere in San Joaquin County is the preference.
Valley.
As a practical, Valley, thank you very much. As a practical matter, to the extent that ag preservation through easements does occur it will likely be maintained in Tulare County. But as part of the settlement, the valley was indicated as the area within which it was available. Now, if your board would like further guidelines to be adopted, there could be stated a preference for Tulare County, but that doesn't have to be an ironclad preference. It could only be a guideline. Next, there was a statement with regard to mitigation banks in the sense that Farm Bureau felt that to the extent there is a mitigation bank, that the regulatory agency should not be the administering agency. It should be noted that a mitigation bank was not within the framework of Attachment G, not within the framework of the program. It's not on the table today. So it's not part of the settlement, and it does not need to be addressed. Turning now to additional comments that were provided by APAC member Scott Spear, which were endorsed by the committee itself and forwarded on to us. It was stated that in terms of the location and the appropriate holder of the easement, again, we addressed the location in terms of it is available for the entire valley, but a guideline could suggest a preference. And again, a backup beneficiary is available after further review of the language. Comment 2, based upon the proposed program, there is a potential to weaken, and with regard to extinguishing the easements, there was some concern. With regard to the first comment, it is the intent not to weaken this program. The county, as the governing body, needs to make the decision to extinguish. We can obtain a recommendation from an expert with regard to whether the easements should be extinguished, but the county, and in particular the Board of Supervisors, as stated in the attachment, should retain the jurisdiction to determine whether an easement should be extinguished. And a guideline could provide further clarity with regard to this if the board was so inclined. With regard to comment number 3, there is a potential that the land under the easement will not be of comparable quality and size. I am here to say that it is very clear that the land should be of comparable quality and size. However, you may recall that I addressed the functional equivalent definition. It is conceivable, consistent with other biological mitigation, that if land was not in its original condition of comparable size and quality, part of the discussion and part of the project requirements with the developer or the applicant could be to upgrade or to improve the quality of the property such that it would satisfy not only the settlement agreement but the spirit of the agreement, which is to ensure that if there is a loss of farmland, the equivalent will be required as part of the project. With regard to are there other options, what are the options, because they're not specifically stated, we'll look at that on a case-by-case review. It is conceivable, though not required, that there be an in lieu mitigation fee. Another possibility is a preservation additive in the sense that there could be already an ag preserve either in Tulare County or in another county, and we could add to that preserve in order to enlarge its protection of farmland. There is a possibility of a mitigation bank. I know that TCAG is studying this matter. Again, it's not part of the settlement, but mitigation bank is something we consider. And I'm also suggesting that if you feel that further study is required, the plan or the program could be adopted and we can refer it back for further study in terms of developing guidelines. All right, the comment was made that public projects should also be required to provide ag mitigation easements, not just private projects. It should be noted that this was a very clear and essential item that was negotiated as part of the settlement, and we are here today to implement that settlement. So public projects are not on the table. With regard to access to water, it is clear that either the land can have water or water may be acquired in order to make the project or make the property of a suitable character. And again, the land must be farmable per the CRC maps, so we're not going to include land, if land is required, that's non-farmable or cultivatable. Next slide, please. Continuing along the lines of comment 3, there is a potential that the land use under easement will not be of comparable quality and size. With regard to the 1-to-1 ratio or the functional equivalent, the intent is not to go below the 1-to-1 outcome. So if we're using a functional equivalent, and by analogy, if we're trying to upgrade property that is not of comparable quality, it still will follow the 1-to-1 ratio. With regard to other farmland easements, Clarification was made in the ACAP based upon comments at the APAC that the language be consistent with the policy, and it is consistent with the policy. Another comment was that grazing land should be included. Again, we were talking about valley agriculture, agriculture on the valley floor, consistent with the general plan. Grazing land was not part of the settlement discussions, and thus it's not on the table here as part of attachment G. All right. There was a lot of discussion, good discussion, with regard to, well, what kind of standards and practices are going to be applicable to qualifying entities. Again, standards and practices were not identified specifically as part of the settlement. However, it is conceivable that we can look at the standards and practices from the Land Trust Alliance as guidance to evaluate what qualifies or what constitutes a qualified entity. All right, that wraps up a very brief review of the responses to comments. So let me just outline for you the options for consideration. We can continue the matter for further board consideration. As a practical matter, we only have 2 meetings in February. Next week, we're dark, the immediate 2 weeks, and then a final week. Those 2 meetings, if you did desire to continue, would still be consistent with the 1-year deadline. You could refer it back to APAC for further discussion and recommendation, but if you did do that, it should be consistent with the time limits by which we are governed under the settlement agreement, which is we got to wrap it up in February. You could request an extension of time for further consideration of the litigating party, because we don't have, based upon my review, the automatic right or the unilateral right to extend time for this particular item. We could renegotiate the stipulated agreement. Or finally, we could adopt the ACAP as is, as proposed, or as revised if your board was inclined to make revisions based upon any comments that were provided by the members of our audience. And you could provide some direction to develop substantially conforming program implementation guidelines with APAC consultation, discussion, and recommendation. And I'll go through that a little bit in more detail on the next slide. So, to wrap this up, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your patience to go through this important item. The matter before you is to adopt the agricultural easement program, and 2, to direct the county administrative officer in concert with the Resource Management Agency to take all necessary and proper action to implement the direction of the Board of Supervisors. I could suggest some additional language if you wish. Item 3, following adoption of the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, refer back to the Agricultural Policy Advisory Committee, APAC, and direct the county administrative officer in concert with the Resource Management Agency to develop substantially conforming program implementation guidelines with APAC consultation, discussion, and recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I have a question. Instead of an agricultural easement, why couldn't we use the mitigation funds to buy basically deed restrictions, CC&Rs on properties?
Deed restrictions would be an available alternative.
Okay, but that is an alternative.
It's not specified, but I think a fair reading of ag easement or some other optional alternative deed restrictions would be available. Now, with regard to the funding source, that's a different matter. But if a developer, let's say, wanted to come forward and voluntarily provide deed restrictions instead of an easement, that could be suitable.
Or the purchase of deed restrictions.
You mean, well, let me make sure I understand.
If I'm a developer,
right,
and I go to a farmer and say, I want to buy your development rights for your property.
That could be a suitable option as well.
So, but I think it needs to be spelled out in our document that deed restrictions, instead of creating easements, is a viable alternative.
Well, we could do that either in the program, or we could do that through implementation guidelines, which has been suggested.
Because the difference is when you start doing easements, and you may have a need for a group to oversee the easement. If you buy deed restrictions, there's no need to oversee the easements other than the zoning.
That's a good question, there should be some kind of monitoring to ensure that the land is still being maintained in cultivated agricultural production.
The problem we have with that at this point in time is the delivery of surface water, which does not guarantee that a lot of the land in Tulare County will be in production 20 years from today. And that's especially evident on the east side of our county, which is the citrus belt. So that is something we have to consider. Is we don't know. We're in flux as to what's going to be viable agricultural properties in the future, since the state is hell-bent on trying to idle 1 million acres in the San Joaquin Valley.
Mr. Chairman, your general plan was drafted, and the settlement documents additionally provide that not all projects are created equally. They're not cookie cutter. And so we've got as much flexibility as we can build in without having crystal balls, so that the remedy will be flexible enough to fit. A particular project may be something, as you mentioned, buying rights here, it may be an easement there. There may be different ways to do it. We are, of course, required to consider easements by the state of California, by state law.
Mr. Chairman, that's well said. That reflects the intent, and what we're trying to do is ensure a case-by-case evaluation so that one size doesn't fit all.
Well, I'm missing one key word here, voluntary. I see must everywhere in here, and I'm not supportive of that. You covered briefly the timeline that we're trying to meet. I'm uncomfortable that Supervisor Worthley is not here. I have questions I want to ask my council. We mentioned it in Luffy. We've never had an in-depth discussion about it in Luffy, other than I know a few of our board members do not, at least 2 of us do not support it in Luffy. Who would be the recipient of that in Luffy? How would you calculate the value of that? For me, there's a lot of open questions that I have, and I did write the water one that Supervisor Ashita brought up. Who can say that a land that you have purchased as an easement is going to have water 10 years from now, and what does that do, to the agreement? So I do have questions I'd like to ask council. I know we have this set for closed session. Before we get too far, I'd like to ask a few questions in closed session. But I want it made really clear, I do not support a one-for-one mitigation. You must provide one-for-one mitigation. There have to be other options, and I don't see that many options in here other than some maybes. So I want to have those maybes defined before I'm ready to vote on this. As it is, I'm not going to support it.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. I know Supervisor Cox has questions, but just in case there may be additional questions that arise after public comment, I suggest we take public comment before we go to closed session.
Anyone here to speak to this item in the audience?
Tricia, when you did rock, paper, scissors, did you win or lose?
Yeah, we're back there in the cheap seats, and you're going to give me... I have to talk really fast. All right, well, I think we're still morning hours. So good morning, Board of Supervisors and staff members and council. Tricia Stever-Blattler, representing the Tulare County Farm Bureau. I really appreciate what Supervisor Cox just brought forth to the conversation. This is a complicated topic, and I represent a membership organization with very divergent and different opinions about this matter. And as much as Mr. Spada had a slide that represented 3-4 years of dialogue at APAC, I have been at the Farm Bureau 9 years here locally and 16 years total, and I have watched Farm Bureaus up and down the state struggle with this conversation for my entire 16-year tenure. And it was not an easy nor clear path that we arrived at on the 14th of the month to provide some statements of general consensus around this topic. It was a grudge match. It was a fight. It was an argument amongst farmers that wish to preserve development rights in the future and farmers that truly believe easements are one of many tools in the toolbox that need to be available and promoted as a way in which to protect farmland. Now, some of this is probably more my particular focus of concern than just what our policy statements say. But if we're going to adopt an agricultural conservation program, let's do the right version of a conservation easement program. I am most fearful that we are pushing through a square peg through a round hole to satisfy a stipulated agreement by court judgment of what the Sierra Club has, I opine, has bullied you into having to decide how to handle. And I don't think on behalf of the Farm Bureau we support or believe that the draft of the program that you have before you is a good version. We think it is fraught with ambiguity, holes, questions, and escape routes that cause future concerns for litigation and instability in how it's going to be interpreted. I think it causes a lot of farmers to question whether they would ever support or utilize a tool like this when it has been crafted in this manner. I think to one other slide that was referenced in Mr. Spada's remarks that right now this program could be afforded to allow any type of use that is allowable under the agricultural zones to then be placed as part of this easement. I don't want to see a bunch of gas stations and other commercialized uses further promulgated onto agricultural land and then counted or defined as being a conservation easement that's protecting farmland. We're not in agreement with this program. I would definitely ask for more time and more opportunity to develop appropriate guidelines. We're fearful that this is not going to go through an ordinance process itself, that you are going to adopt the resolution as presented by way of the stipulated agreement, and we have a lot of concerns about the direction of this. And I would also just offer that I think APAC needs better direction on how to take a complex topic like this and break it down. Mr. Spada referenced on a slide dozens of engagements of this topic at the APAC level, and I would respectfully disagree that a lot of those meetings, there was really not substantive dialogue or productive conversation about the direction. There were many times where it was, well, we really don't know enough about this. Can we just put this off 1 more month or 2 more months, or we'll wait for this to come back? What does the Farm Bureau think? Well, we'll wait till we know what Farm Bureau thinks before we talk about it. That is not good planning process. So we have a lot of concerns. Thank you for taking this seriously. Please don't take action on this today. Let's give it more time and do it right.
Good morning, board members. Daniel O'Connell. I'm the San Joaquin Valley Program Manager for American Farmland Trust. I'd like to begin by thanking Mr. Spada and his staff and all of you, APAC, and in particular the Farm Bureau, as this discussion has gone on. While I was the Farmland Conservation Director at Sequoia Riverlands Trust prior to working with AFT, I saw the shortcomings of implementing policies or programs through litigation, as the Sierra Club, the same one that spurred this litigation, sued developers in Kern County and made it very difficult for the land trust to implement that. The APAC deliberations have been farmer-centric. The letter that the Farm Bureau submitted strengthens some of the and tightens some of the oversights that were from the settlement, and I think perhaps as I see those conversations going forward, the Sierra Club would likely offer more time to let the farm community come around and understand this. in other jurisdictions, the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors has been doing work on the in lieu fee, for instance, and has a methodology. There's many different methodologies. There's so many details, and it's so important for our ag community to be at the lead of this. And Tricia, and you have a land trust here, Sequoia River Lands Trust, that is accredited land trust, has ranchers and farmers on the board, is very respected. They can implement this policy easily and partner with you. The mitigation in the public funds, because there's federal and there is state funds that can be joined with mitigation funds, represents an investment to farmers. There are farmers who live in city limits, and most of the mitigation is going to happen within cities. And who's going to receive those funds? I hope it's Tulare County farmers, not farmers farther afield. But there's a lot of farmers that have land equity that can't access it without selling the farm. Conservation easement enables them to access that equity. So any farmer that's not within the lifetime where they will be able to develop doesn't have that access to their equity. Conservation easement is a business tool that enables them the tax benefits, both estate planning and income. They can recapitalize their operations. It's 1031 exchange eligible, so you can avoid capital gains tax and reinvest it in more farmland or whatever. You don't have to even reinvest the 1031 exchange in ag, but many farmers do. And then, of course, you can recapitalize your operations. And the first easements here, I saw farmers move towards olives, say out of grapes, and they use those funds in that way. Finally, I'll just leave it at this. As I moved to Fresno after I took the job with AFT, I've seen the deliberations going on in Fresno and Tulare, both very similar. The major cities, Clovis and Fresno, the city of Fresno, city of Tulare, and Visalia all have ag mitigation ordinances that are going to require the county to have this conversation. So that is what's coming next. And to have the Farm Bureau, the Land Trust, with the county and the cities are going to generate these revenues, these mitigation fees. Where are they going to go? So we need to begin to consider how we want to grow. And if we're not, I have this map from LA in 1916. I was born in Inglewood. Inglewood looks like a very small town like Exeter at the time. Watts and Compton are very small towns. That's all gone in our own lifetime. The #1 ag county in the United States. What a wonderful process this is going to be. And there's other policy tools, by the way, that we can access. This is hopefully the beginning of a conversation. Continue to work with Tricia and Soapy and the cities to find out where we want to put these investments. Thank you very much, and good luck as this conversation continues.
My name is Scott Spear. I live in Visalia. I'm speaking to you as a farmer and as a member of the Tulare County Ag Policy Advisory Committee. I'd like to address a couple of issues. As Mr. Spada mentioned, the word conservation easement has appeared in our notes for the past 3 or 4 years. Does not mean there's been discussion. There's only been 2 times where we've had substantial discussion. One in December when the language was brought to us, and I felt as though it was the 11th hour before this board wanted to sit on it. That's number one. Mr. Ishida, I'd like to address deed restrictions. Under CEQA, and I will ask council to research this, CEQA requires that it be if there's a taking or mitigation under CEQA, it will be a conservation easement in perpetuity. Deed restrictions do not work. Mr. Cox, I'd like to address your concern over must. You said must. Under CEQA, you must have a conservation easement if there's a taking of or conversion of ag land. It will be, so the easement must happen, but it will be between a willing seller and a willing buyer. So there is no actual taking like an easement that Edison can do, or the county can increase a right-of-way through eminent domain. So it is a willing seller, willing buyer. I would also like to reiterate or express the last time our committee, AgPAC, met last week, we did not endorse this language. As a matter of fact, the caveats were if these, which Mr. Spada faithfully reproduced, the letter from the Farm Bureau and the letter I submitted, with the stipulation these items be considered in the language, we would support the notion. We support unanimously the conservation easement principle. We did not support the language of this resolution. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak to this issue? If not, I guess we'll go to closed session.
Next meeting the 2nd? Is our next meeting the 2nd?
Our next meeting the 2nd?
The second.
Second. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this item till February 2nd and direct our staff to arrange to have a workshop on this issue, and we'll determine a date probably the 2nd.
Set the official date, but likely to be within the next 2 weeks for the workshops.
And in that workshop, we'll be inviting the APAC.
I would second that motion.
I'm sorry, to clarify, are you inviting APEC or are you
It's going to
asking
be,
for a joint
I would like a
meeting?
joint meeting with APAC.
Joint meeting.
And that's my second.
Okay, let's vote. It's unanimous. Lists Supervisor Worthley. And part of the reason we want to extend this too is because Supervisor Worthley wasn't in attendance today, and we want his input on this as well. So, hey, do we have need for closed session?
Chairman, you have items A through J on your board's closed session agenda and addendum. Item H is off. No, I'm sorry, not H. I is off agenda, and I do anticipate an announcement.
Okay. Okay. Open session is adjourned.
Team meeting? Sorry. Ready? Further announcement at a closed session today, Tuesday, January 26, 2016, in the matter of item F, the matter of Brooks versus County of Tulare Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, case number ADJ 8109410. The board voted in this matter to authorize the filing of an appellate writ of the decision of the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. Motion was Supervisor Ishida, seconded by Supervisor Cox on a 4-0 vote, Supervisor Worthley being absent. There are no other announcements. Pen I can borrow? A pen.